He was not born to fight, but sometimes it's the only way for him to survive. We don't always choose the moments that change our lives. Sometimes they arrive quietly. Not with a warning, not with a scream, but with a flicker. A soft rhythm pulsing faintly in the dark. That's how it began for Talon Merek. A man long forgotten by the galaxy scraping by on the edge of its discarded skeletons. It started with a signal. Not mechanical, not structured like any beacon he knew. Just alive. Drift Veil 9. Station floated in the silent graveyard between orbital lanes, a rusted carcass of war and neglect. Talon had been here before years ago. Back then, it had purpose crew heat. Now it was just another dead husk drifting in space, half-eaten by time and abandonment. He came for scrap, nothing more. Oxygen tanks, old alloy, maybe a few salvageable processors. But then his ship's sensor pinged. Not with static, but with a pulse. It was faint, organic, almost like a heartbeat echoing through broken metal. He stared at the console as it lit up again. Then a second pulse, slightly different, rhythmic, uncertain. It wasn't on any emergency frequency. No code, no message. Just resonance. Talon leaned in, watching it carefully. There was no logic to it. It didn't match any known signal. But something about it felt intentional. Not desperate, not random. Personal. Like someone wasn't just sending it out into the void, but sending it to him. That thought alone was enough to make him hesitate. He tapped the console, brought up deep scan filters, and checked for traps. No known weapon signatures. No power surges. Nothing that screamed ambush. But still, something gnawed at him. The kind of feeling that crawled under your armor, made you sweat without reason. "I'm getting too old for ghost stories," he muttered, but his fingers were already reaching for the controls. He suited up. The old Pathfinder armor hissed as the seals engaged. It still fits mostly. Some dents hadn't been buffed out. Scorch marks on the chest plate, a cracked visor corner that refused to clear. He pulled his pulse rifle from the rack out of habit more than needed. And then he docked. Drift Veil 9 greeted him with silence. The airlock creaked, and the scent of oxidized metal and stale atmosphere hit him like a memory. He stepped into the corridor, flashlight slicing through the dark. Dust floated in the beam. Footprints long faded. No signs of recent activity. He moved slowly, methodically. Decades of muscle memory kept him sharp, but the deeper he went, the stronger the signal became. It wasn't louder, just closer, like a presence humming underneath the walls. Then he heard it, a soft clang, not metal falling, a footstep. He dropped into cover, rifle raised. A voice hissed from around the corner. "Stay back, female, tired, desperate." "I'm not your enemy," Talon called out, lowering his rifle slightly. Silence. He stepped forward and the beam of his light fell on her. A woman crouched against the wall, holding a small welding torch like a blade. Her hair was matted, cheeks smudged with grease and fear, and in her arms, curled up and unmoving, was a child. Talon froze. The woman glared. "If you're Eclipse, I'll burn your eyes out." "Do I look like Eclipse to you?" Talon asked, slowly lowering his weapon to the ground. She didn't answer, but she didn't strike either. "I picked up a signal," he continued. "Biological. Stronger the closer I got. That coming from the kid." Now she flinched. "She's different," the woman whispered. Talon inched closer, cautious. "Is she yours?" "Yes." The child stirred. Her face came into view. A girl, pale skin with faint luminescent lines, tracing under the surface like veins of light. Her eyes opened, and for a moment Talon forgot where he was. The girl looked at him like he was a puzzle she was trying to solve. And then he felt it. The pulse hit him, not through sound or sight, but inside. A low resonance pressing softly against his chest. Not threatening, curious, familiar somehow. He staggered, slightly blinking. "What the hell?" he muttered. The woman watched him closely. She didn't mean to send it. It happens when she's scared, or when she dreams. "She sent that signal?" he asked, stunned. "She is the signal." Talon looked back at the girl. She was no older than 7, but her gaze held galaxies. She reached toward him, fingers outstretched, brushing the air, like she could feel something he couldn't see. And then the resonance returned. Not words, not thoughts. Emotions. Gentle, lonely, frightened. It was like being seen and forgotten at the same time. "Who are you?" he asked quietly. "My name is Seren," the woman said, "and this is Lyra. We're hiding from the people who made her." Talon's eyes narrowed. Division Eclipse. She nodded slowly. They built her in a lab, spliced her genes with something old, ancient. She was never meant to be born, just used. She can activate things, machines no one else can. They want her to open something. What, the Vault of Verelion? Talon had heard rumors, tales of ancient technology buried under starless worlds, devices that shape planets, turn thought into architecture. But that was all a myth, fantasy, until now. Lyra blinked again. This time her eyes glowed faintly. Her lips didn't move, but Talon felt her again. Not fear, not pain, hope. And that was the moment. The one he'd remember long after the fights, the fire, the losses. Not the tech, not the mission, just that look, that silent plea from a child who never got to be one. "I'm not here to hurt you," Talon said softly, "but I'm also not walking away." Seren's shoulders slumped. She looked down at Lyra, brushing a hand gently over her tangled hair. "We don't have much time," she whispered. "If they find us again—" "They won't," Talon interrupted. "Not if I can help it." He picked up his rifle, gaze steady now. "Come on, let's get her out of here." And just like that, the signal changed, from a call for help to a bond. Talon moved quickly, guiding Seren and Lyra through the fractured corridors of Driftvale 9. The old station groaned around them, metal plates shifting with each step like the remnants of a dying animal, refusing to go quietly. His flashlight cut through the murk, illuminating dust-thick air, and collapsed walls that spoke of battles no one had bothered to record. Lyra stayed close to her mother, tiny fingers clenched in the fabric of Seren's sleeve. Her eyes, however, wandered. Wide and luminous, they scanned every junction, every broken console, every flicker of faded emergency lights. She didn't flinch from the shadows. She didn't cry. Instead, she tilted her head in a way that made Talon feel like she was listening to something beyond his hearing. "She always likes it," he asked in a low voice. Seren gave a small nod, not slowing. "She can feel systems. Like they're alive." "You mean like intuition?" "No. I mean the machines feel her back, respond to her. It's not logical, but I've seen it too many times to deny it." Talon didn't argue. He had walked alongside enough strange tech in the war to know better than to discount what he didn't understand. And yet Lyra was something else entirely. Not a product of a strange culture or lost technology. She was alive, and yet somehow more. They turned into the emergency hangar bay, where Talon's ship rested unevenly on cracked plating. The vessel was ugly, bulky, and scarred from too many landings under fire. But it was his, and it flew. That was enough. "In there," Talon said. "Go." Seren hesitated. "You don't owe us this." "I know." "Then why help?" He paused. The question hung in the air longer than it should have. "I lost someone," he finally said. "A little girl. Couldn't save her. Maybe this time I will get a second chance." Her expression softened. She touched his arm. No words. Just the kind of gesture you give someone who still carries the weight of a ghost. Then she turned and led Lyra up the ramp. Talon lingered a second longer, watching the darkness. A sensation prickled at the back of his neck. The signal had faded. That should have been good news. Instead, it felt like silence before a storm. He checked his visor. The motion sensor blinked. Then it flared. Damn it. He slammed the hatch shut and ran to the cockpit. "Buckle in," he called, already firing up the engines. The ship rumbled to life, vibrations rising through the floor. A flash of red streaked past the viewport. A second later, the hull screamed as a plasma bolt struck near the thruster bay. Seren grabbed Lyra and pulled her into the crash seat beside her. "Who is it?" she shouted. "Division Eclipse," Talon replied, eyes scanning the perimeter. "They moved too clean to be pirates. Must have traced the bioresonance." More figures appeared across the bay. Their armor was matte black, fitted tightly, no insignias. Their weapons hummed, not like rifles, more like surgical instruments. They moved like a machine with a dozen limbs, precise, quiet, lethal. "They want her alive," Seren said. "They won't risk a direct hit. They might not get the choice." Talon threw the ship into vertical lift. The vessel shook as another bolt grazed the side panel. Sparks flew from the console. Lyra gasped but didn't scream. She just reached for the wall beside her, fingers splayed wide. A pulse shot through the ship. Not sound, not movement, just a ripple of sensation. The screens glitched. The controls froze. For a breathless second, everything went still. "Kid, not now," Talon said, slamming his palm against the stabilizer. Seren turned toward her daughter. "Lyra, calm yourself. You're scaring the ship." The girl closed her eyes. Her breathing slowed. The interference faded, and the vessel responded. Talon seized the moment. He accelerated, steering the ship straight toward the old hangar doors. Another barrage came from the Eclipse unit, but it was already too late. The engines roared and the vessel surged through the breach, leaving the crumbling station behind. They drifted in silence, surrounded by the empty dark. Talon wiped sweat from his brow, eyes locked on the void ahead. "Well," he muttered, "that could have gone worse." Seren arched an eyebrow. "You consider that a success? Hey, no one's dead. That's a win in my book." Behind them, Lyra looked up. Her voice was quiet, almost a whisper. "You stayed." Talon turned slightly. "Yeah, I guess I did." "You were angry when I touched your mind," she said. Seren stiffened. "Lyra." "It's all right," Talon interrupted. "She's not wrong," Lyra continued. "You're sad. You hide it under your armor, but it's heavy. You were angry. Not at me. At the stars." Talon chuckled. "You've got sharp instincts. I didn't mean to make you feel it. Sometimes I reach without knowing." "You didn't hurt me," he said. "But you did see through me. That's rarer." They fell quiet again. The hum of the ship settled into a steady rhythm. The stars stretched out before them, like old bones scattered across black velvet. "Where now?" Talon finally asked. "There's a place," Seren said slowly. "A system on the edge. Velmyra. Hard to find. The magnetic fields make sensors useless. We might be safe there." He nodded. "Good enough. Plug in the coordinates." She paused. "You're really coming with us. I've already come this far. You know they'll keep coming. They don't stop. Not for anything." Talon looked back at Lyra. "She's not a weapon," he said. "She's a kid, and I don't leave kids behind." As the stars began to shift with the jump to sublight travel, Talon settled back into his seat. No one spoke, but something unspoken had changed between them. This wasn't just a rescue anymore. This was a family forming in the ruins. Velmyra lay ahead like a fractured marble caught in motion, a storm-wrapped planet with swirling clouds of red and violet. It was the kind of place that did not want to be found. Magnetic surges scrambled long-range scans, and its gravity fields made orbital approach more art than science. Most captains avoided it, which of course made it perfect. Talon guided the ship into descent, muscles tense with focus. The controls twitched under his fingers as if resisting. Each jolt of turbulence felt like a slap from the planet itself. "This place has personality," he muttered. Seren, strapped in behind him, kept her eyes on Lyra, who sat cradled in a blanket far too big for her. The child did not appear afraid. Her gaze was fixed on the viewport, wide with silent wonder, as the skies shifted from black to burning rose. "This planet feels awake," Lyra said softly. Talon didn't answer. He had no words for that kind of statement, but something about it felt true. Velmyra was not dead. It had been left behind, yes, but not forgotten. The landscape seemed to hum with memory. They landed in the shadow of a jagged mountain range near a canyon that looked like it had been clawed open by something ancient. The ground was dry, cracked in veins of rust red and bone white. In the distance, spires of stone reached up like the fingers of some buried god. Talon powered down the engines and let the silence fall. "This is it," Seren said quietly. "This is home," he asked. "For now. We'll find a cave system to settle in. The magnetic storms will shield us from long-range tracking. And the terrain. Good luck sending drones through it." He nodded, though part of him still hated being grounded. Ships could move. Caves could collapse. But he had to admit the planet had its own kind of beauty. Wild, untamed, honest. They disembarked quickly, moving supplies with practiced efficiency. Talon didn't ask what she had done before the flight from Eclipse, but her grip on the crates and the way she checked their surroundings said enough. She was no stranger to survival. Lyra walked beside him, silent, clutching a small orb-like device Seren had handed her earlier. It glowed faintly in her hands. "What's that?" Talon asked. "She calls it her compass," Seren answered. "It reacts to resonance fields, helps her stay balanced when things get noisy. Resonance fields, emotional noise, tech energy, static patterns. She feels them all. That little device helps keep her centered." Talon watched the girl for a moment, noting the way she tilted her head toward every distant vibration. Not fear, curiosity, and something else. He remembered his daughter, briefly, a flicker of memory that cut sharper than he expected. Her laugh had once filled his cabin. Now the silence after that laugh echoed louder than any scream. He caught himself staring. Lyra looked up. She was beautiful. He blinked. "What's your daughter?" "You remember her like sunlight. Warm. But it hurts." He didn't answer. Couldn't. He just nodded once and turned to the supplies. They spent the rest of the day building shelter in the canyon, setting up energy shields around the perimeter, and stacking rations under the overhang of rock. By nightfall, the storm clouds had begun to swirl again above them, casting soft lightning across the broken ground. Inside the temporary shelter, a soft hum grew from the orb in Lyra's hands. Talon glanced over. "Is that normal?" "She's picking up something," Seren said. "Something old." Lyra sat cross-legged on the floor, the orb levitating slightly above her palms. Her eyes were closed. Her breathing is slow and rhythmic. Talon stood walking over slowly. "Lyra." She opened her eyes. "Something's buried here." Talon frowned. "Like what A machine?" "Sleeping." Serene's eyes narrowed. "You sure she didn't mean it metaphorically?" Talon said. "No, she didn't," Seren replied, voice flat. "If there's an artifact here that's both good and bad, how bad? If Eclipse finds it first, they'll send every drone they have into this canyon." Talon paced the room, processing. "We need to check it out." Quietly. "We just got here," Seren warned. "I know, but if there's a Varelian relic under our feet, we're not safe. Either we learn how to use it, or someone else will." Lyra spoke again, her voice strange. "It's not a weapon. It's sad." That stopped them both. Talon knelt beside her. "What do you mean, sad?" "It's like it forgot its purpose. It's waiting for someone to remind me." He stared at the child, unsure of what disturbed him more, that she could feel such things, or that she might be right. Later that night, while Seren slept, Talon stood watch, outside, rifle in hand. The wind howled through the cliffs like distant voices. Every so often, he glanced back at the shelter where Lyra slept peacefully wrapped in salvaged blankets, and something much older than trust. He didn't understand what she was, not fully, but he knew the galaxy didn't make things like her by accident. The question wasn't what she could do, it was what she was meant to be, and whether anyone had ever given her the chance to choose for herself. Before the first rays of Velmyra's fractured sun reached the canyon floor, the storm had already begun. The sky boiled in shades of deep purple and sickly green, with bolts of magnetic energy clawing across the clouds. It wasn't a natural storm. Nothing about this planet ever felt natural. The air buzzed with static, and the rocks themselves seemed to hum. Inside the cave shelter, the silence shattered. Lyra sat up, eyes wide open before anyone else had stirred. Her little hands clutched the orb Seren had given her the day before, now glowing with an intensity that painted her face in soft white light. Seren was already awake, crouched over the scanner console that buzzed and popped from interference. Talon leaned over her shoulder. "What's happening? Resonance spikes," Seren answered. Her voice was calm, but her hands moved quickly. "Not environmental. Patterned." Talon narrowed his eyes. "You mean artificial? They found us." He stepped back, heart thudding. How Seren didn't look up. "They're not using the usual systems. They're using her." Lyra turned her head slowly. "They're listening," she said, almost as if apologizing. "I tried to be quiet." Seren rushed to her daughter and wrapped her arms around her. "I know, baby. You did your best." Talon took a slow breath. The walls of the cave seemed closer now, pressing in. He grabbed his gear, sliding on the chest plate and locking in his rifle harness with practiced hands. "They're here already." Before Seren could answer, a sharp crack echoed through the canyon. Not thunder, not rockfall, a displacement wave. Talon swore under his breath. He rushed toward the cave entrance and peered through the shimmering curtain of magnetic energy. They were coming. Sleek shapes dropped from the sky like ink in water. Black suits, no markings, no words. 6 soldiers moved with perfect synchronization, fanning out across the ridge above the shelter. Division Eclipse. They brought a cleanup squad, Talon muttered. Fast extraction, minimal noise. They want her alive, Seren said behind him. They always do. Talon gritted his teeth. We're not giving her up. Another pulse rippled through the air and Lyra winced. Her orb flared. They're pulling on me, she whispered, like a string in my chest. Seren turned to Talon. They're going to use a field displacer. They'll phase her out. It's not teleportation. It's worse. They suspend her between pulses until they reintegrate her inside a containment chamber. Talon adjusted his rifle. Tell me how to stop it. You can't. Not directly. Once the displacer's active, it's like trying to catch fog. Outside, the lead Eclipse agent raised a hand. A sphere hovered into the air, spinning rapidly. Its surface gleamed like liquid silver, forming into the familiar shape of a spatial displacer. Get her away from here, Talon shouted. But it was too late. A piercing tone rang through the cave and the air around Lyra twisted. Light refracted, violently forming a cocoon that shimmered with impossible colors. The girl cried out once, not in pain but in fear. Then she was gone. Nothing remained but the orb cracked and flickering on the stone floor. Seren's scream tore through the cave, raw and primal. Talon grabbed her arm, pulling her back as Eclipse moved in. We have to go. They took her. Seren fought him, tears streaking down her dirt-stained face. We were so careful. I was careful. And we're going to take her back, Talon said firmly. But not if we die here. He hurled a proximity charge into the canyon mouth. The explosion was sharp, not massive, but it bought them 5 seconds of blind retreat. They ran ducking into the ravine behind the camp, kicking up dust and shards of metal from their supply cache. Talon triggered a remote sequence to collapse the path behind them. The detonation roared through the cliffs, sealing off the entrance. They didn't stop until the ship came into view, half covered in dust, still powered down for stealth. Talon activated the lift ramp, while Seren climbed aboard, hands trembling. Inside the cockpit, Talon activated the nav system. The trace was faint, but the displacer signature had left a ghost trail. He locked onto it. Omen Halo, he muttered. She said they'd take Lyra there. Seren wiped her face and stared at him. You know what that place is? I know it was decommissioned after the war. Now I know why. It's where she was created. Their vault, their lab, their breeding grounds. Talon looked her in the eyes. Then it's time we paid them a visit. He slammed the throttle forward. The ship rose engines, protesting against the angry winds. The storm bled static across the viewport, and still he pressed on. This wasn't about escape anymore. This was pursuit. Seren collapsed into the seat beside him, voice flat. She'll be scared. She knows we're coming. She doesn't believe that. Not yet. Talon's voice was like steel. Then we're going to show her. As the ship broke through the upper atmosphere, Velmyra shrank beneath them. The storm still raged, screaming into the void. But neither of them looked back. Lyra was gone. But not for long. The stars stretched thin as the ship hurtled through the corridor of slip-space streaks of light, twisting around the hull like a tunnel made from shattered mirrors. Talon sat at the control's shoulders, stiff hands firm on the nav system. Every second felt like a drop of water before the boil. He wasn't just flying toward Omen Halo. He was flying into the past, into the heart of what made Lyra, and perhaps what had broken Seren. Behind him, the cabin was quiet. Seren sat with her back straight, her eyes locked on nothing in particular. Her fingers kept clenching and unclenching, as if trying to wring meaning from the silence. She had barely spoken since they escaped. Talon hadn't pushed her. He knew that kind of silence. It was not absent. It was a storm trying to hold still. After a long stretch of humming drive, coils, and tension, Talon finally spoke. What is it, this Omen Halo place? You never really said. Seren didn't look at him. It was a research station. Once. Back when Division Eclipse was still under the jurisdiction of the Galactic Biocommission. Before the split. The genetic war. She nodded slowly. That war was fought with labs, not soldiers. They didn't need armies. They needed results. And Omen Halo was where they experimented on resonance hybrids. Failed ones. Like me. Talon's brow furrowed. You're saying you were one of them? Not exactly. I was a host. A carrier. They manipulated my DNA to make it compatible with Varelian strands. I wasn't supposed to survive the gestation. None of us were. Talon glanced back at her. But you did. I escaped before they could dissect what went right. She finally turned toward him. Lyra was never meant to be born. She was meant to be activated. The words settled like ash. And now they have her again, she added. Talon didn't respond right away. The stars outside shimmered and bent, and for a moment he felt as if they were sliding across the edge of something larger than space. It was not just a rescue. This was about severing the root of everything that had gone wrong. We're getting her back, he said more to himself than her. The ship's system pinged. Arrival within range in 90 seconds. Omen Halo came into view like a wound in space. It wasn't a station so much as a cluster of metallic growths attached to an asteroid pulsing faintly with blue light. Half organic, half machine, it looked like it had been constructed by something that had never seen a blueprint, but understood structure through instinct. Biotech architecture. Alive and watching. Talon narrowed his eyes. Looks like a nest. It is Seren, said voice brittle. And we're walking into it. As they approached, scanners began flickering. The outer perimeter of Omen Halo scrambled frequencies. Talon had seen this before in failed mind-bridging tech used during the war. The signal wasn't meant to block ships. It was meant to confuse them. You know a way in, he asked. There's a secondary port under the old waste ventilation ducts. They sealed it, but I remember the access code. Seriously, they kept the same code after all this time. No, Seren replied. I kept the back door. They don't know it exists. Talon gave a grim half-smile. I like you more every minute. They circled the asteroid, staying below the main defense lattice. The entry port appeared half-buried in twisted alloy and overgrowth. Seren uploaded the code, and the hatch peeled open like a flower in reverse. The ship docked with a hiss. Inside the airlock, Talon ran final checks on his weapon. Seren grabbed a compact shock pistol and a pulse knife. You good, he asked. No, she answered. But I'm ready. They stepped inside. The corridors of Omen Halo were colder than space. Not by temperature, but by atmosphere. Every panel seemed to breathe. Every light pulse throbbed like veins. The walls were made of metallic mesh interwoven with something softer. Not flesh, not fiber, something in between. I forgot how quiet it is, Seren whispered. You say that like it's alive. It is. On some level. Talon scanned the path ahead. So where would they take her? They'll prepare her for the vault interface. That means core chamber theta. It's buried deep. They moved through the hallways in silence. No guards, no patrols. Just a sense of anticipation, as if the station already knew they had arrived. Then they heard it. A voice, not spoken, not broadcast, inside their heads. Return to resonance. Unlock the inheritance. Talon winced. Was that? Seren nodded. Nyros, the central AI. Still active. Can it see us? It sees everything, but it won't act until it knows we're a threat. I've got bad news for it then. They descended deeper, the corridors changing subtly. The biotech structure became more polished, more symmetrical. Varelian. Ancient. As if Eclipse had peeled back the asteroid to reveal something that had always been there. Then the lights changed. Red pulses. Containment breach, Seren said. They know. Talon didn't wait. He broke into a run. They passed dormant growth chambers, sealed test tubes with deformed embryos, shattered displays of hybrid blueprints, failed attempts, echoes of past experiments. Lyra had survived all this. She was the one success in a sea of horrors. Finally, they reached a wide circular chamber. At its center, surrounded by translucent vines of living data cords, stood a tall pillar with an interface node. Attached to it was a small figure. Lyra, suspended, eyes closed, arms floating outward. The cords had fused with her skin like liquid glass, reading her resonance like an ancient instrument tuning itself. Talon stepped forward, heart pounding. Lyra. Her eyes opened, and everything changed. The air pulsed, the walls rippled, and something deep within the station stirred. She saw him, and she remembered. Lyra's eyes glowed like twin moons caught in the grip of an eclipse, neither fully light nor dark. Her body remained suspended in the cradle of living wires, though her awareness had returned. She blinked slowly, as if waking from a dream layered over reality. The cords that wrapped around her pulsed with rhythm, matching the beat of her heart. Talon took another step forward, keeping his weapon lowered. "It's all right," he said, voice soft but firm. "We're here now. We're getting you out of this." Lyra tilted her head slightly, her gaze focusing on him, as if trying to piece together a memory. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then the room shifted. The walls, which had appeared smooth and curved like carved marble, began to breathe. Pulsing waves of light traveled through the surfaces, and the temperature dropped. From the ceiling, translucent panels slid open, revealing glowing filaments hanging down like vines. They moved with intent. "It's sinking," Seren whispered beside him. "The system is recognizing her. It's not just reading her resonance anymore." "I welcome it." "Is that good or bad?" Talon asked. "I don't know." A voice echoed across the chamber, and this time it was no longer in their minds. It was real, hollow, modulated, and yet tinged with something too precise to be human. "Resonance node authenticated. Integration sequence initiated. Vault unlock pending." Seren grabbed Talon's arm. "They're going to force her to activate the vault." "I thought she had to want to do it." "She does, but they can manipulate that. They've conditioned her since before she could walk. If she believes it's the only way to protect us, she'll submit." Talon's jaw clenched. "Then we make damn sure she doesn't have to." He scanned the room, noting the consoles embedded in the walls. No guards, no visible technicians. This wasn't a military outpost. It was a sanctum. Division Eclipse had no need for guns here. They relied on certainty, on control. He moved to the central pedestal and began to examine the interface. The moment his fingers brushed the surface, the system responded. "Unauthorized interface detected. The subject lacks a Varelian imprint." "Figures," he muttered. Before he could step back, several of the glowing filaments shot downward, aiming for him. Seren pulled him away just in time. The filaments struck the ground where he had stood, then retracted, slithering back into the ceiling like serpents denied their prey. Talon steadied himself. "They're not just reading data. This place is alive." They integrated Varelian organic systems into the architecture. Seren said, eyes locked on Lyra. "And Lyra is their perfect key." Then something changed in Lyra's expression. Her mouth moved just barely. "Tal?" He rushed forward again, slower this time, cautious. "I'm here." She blinked. "You came. Always." Tears welled up at the corners of her eyes. "They said you wouldn't. They said I was meant for more. You're not meant for them. You're not meant to be a tool." She shook her head. "They said if I open it, no one will ever hurt me again." Seren's voice broke through. "That's a lie, Lyra. They don't want to protect you. They want to use you. I don't want anyone else to get hurt." "And you won't," Talon said firmly. "Not if we stop this. Together." Lyra hesitated. The cables around her shimmered. Then from the far side of the chamber, a door opened with a hiss. A man stepped through, dressed in eclipse gray, tall, slender, with silver hair and eyes that did not blink often. His presence sucked the warmth from the air. "Cal Vorn Seren," muttered venom in every syllable. Talon raised his rifle. The man ignored it. He walked slowly like a professor entering a classroom. Not a threat, a statement. "Lyra," he said, voice crisp and cultured. "You mustn't be distracted. The sequence is delicate." "She's done," Talon snapped. "Disconnect her." Kale gave a small, almost pitying smile. "You misunderstand. She's not connected to the system. The system is connected to her." He turned to Seren. "You look well considering you were marked for liquidation." Seren's weapon clicked as she aimed at his heart. "Try me," Kale sighed. "Violence is always your first response, and yours is manipulation. She was created for this purpose." "She was born," Talon interrupted. "Not built, not summoned, not coded. Born. That makes her a person." Kyle's eyes glinted. "That depends on your definition of personhood." The council would argue otherwise. Talon didn't blink. The council can burn. There was a pause. Then Kale took a step back, pressing his palm to a wall console. The room shifted again. This time the floor cracked in a wide circle beneath Lyra, and she began to lower slowly into a subchamber. Talon fired. The shot slammed into the wall, sparking harmlessly. Kyle raised his hand. The chamber's defenses came alive. Panels slid open, releasing drone-like constructs from the ceiling and floor. 4 of them, smooth black insectile, and very sharp. Seren opened fire. 2 drones dropped instantly, sparking and hissing. Talon moved to intercept the third while ducking under a slicing arc from the 4th. The pedestal continued to lower. Lyra's eyes met Talon's once more, full of terror. He sprinted toward her, rolling under a sweeping drone blade and unloading 2 pulses into its chassis. Seren leapt onto the last drone, stabbing her shock knife deep into its control node. It convulsed, then dropped lifeless. Kale watched calmly, as if noting the behavior of particularly unruly lab specimens. "You can't stop the sequence," he said. "I don't have to," Talon replied. "She can." He reached the edge of the platform just as Lyra's hands began to twitch. Sparks erupted from the cables. She was resisting. Her voice echoed through the chamber, small but defiant. "No." Kale's expression changed, just slightly. Lyra's body shook. The cables strained to hold her, but the light in her eyes brightened. Her pulse reverberated through the floor. Talon could feel it. A sound like shattering glass erupted, and the interface node cracked. Sparks rained down. The chamber dimmed. The system for the first time hesitated. Kyle turned and fled, disappearing through the far corridor. The cables released her. Lyra dropped forward. Talon caught her, and at that moment all the machinery in the room went still. Talon held Lyra tightly against his chest as the platform retracted with a final groan. The glowing filaments that had once connected her to the ancient interface now lay dark and inert. The energy that had once pulsed through the chamber was gone, replaced by silence. Not peace, not yet. But silence, and that meant time. Seren rushed forward, checking Lyra's face, brushing dust and faint traces of static from her cheeks. "Baby, can you hear me?" she whispered. Lyra stirred weakly in Talon's arms. Her skin felt warm, too warm. Her breathing was steady but shallow, as if something inside her was still resonating far below the surface. "She broke the link," Talon said. "She actually did it." Seren nodded slowly, but it took everything she had. That system was older than language, and she said no. Talon lowered her gently onto the padded floor of the antechamber, keeping his rifle close. The damaged drones still smoked around them. Sparks dripped from the ceiling like artificial rainfall. "We need to move," he said. Kel got away. "If he activates the outer lockdown protocol..." A low tremor rolled through the floor, answering the thought before he finished saying it. Seren reached into her coat and pulled out a stim injector. "Hold her steady." Talon cradled Lyra's small body, while Seren pressed the injector to her neck. The girl flinched but didn't cry. After a few seconds, her eyes opened again. Dim, uncertain, but conscious. "Mama," she croaked. "I'm here, sweetheart. You're safe. We're going home." Lyra blinked slowly. Then her gaze drifted up toward the walls, toward something unseen. "The machine is sad," she whispered. Seren frowned. "What?" "It was waiting for someone like me. But I didn't give it what it wanted." Talon spoke gently. "You gave it what it needed. A choice." Lyra nodded faintly and then closed her eyes again, just resting. Talon checked the corridor Kale had disappeared into. "We go now." Before he figures out how to counter what she just did. Seren grabbed a recovery blanket and wrapped Lyra in it as they moved. Talon led the way, rifle scanning every corridor, every flicker of residual energy. Omen Halo had grown darker, as if her refusal had not only shut down the vault, but wounded the entire station. They followed Kale's escape trail through a descending passage that eventually opened into a vast observation deck. The view beyond the curved glass revealed the asteroid field Omen Halo was nestled and lit by the pale glow of a fractured moon. But that was not what caught their attention. A ship was docked just beyond the secondary hangar. Sleek, government model, fast. "He's preparing to leave," Talon said. "Or worse, call reinforcements." Seren's hand tensed around her weapon. "We can't let him escape with any data. If he brings what he's seen to the rest of Eclipse, they'll try again, and next time they won't use a child. Talon looked down at Lyra, then at the ship beyond the airlock. I'll go. What no? You get her out. I'll stop him. We do this together. No, Talon said softly. This part, I have to do it alone. Seren stared at him for a long moment. Why? Because I know men like Cale Vorn. I've worked under them. I've obeyed orders without asking where they led, until they led straight into a grave. Someone has to draw the line. She nodded slowly, reluctant but understanding. Then you'd better come back. He gave her a small smile. That's the plan. He handed her a coded disc. Take this. It's the override key. It'll unlock my ship and set coordinates for Velmyra. Serene's eyes widened. You're giving us your ship. She belongs to the girl now. Besides, I might be flying something bigger when I'm done here. They split at the junction. Talon sprinted through the access corridor, boots striking the floor with force. His mind narrowed to a single point of focus. No guilt. No fear. Just purpose. Cal was already inside the control chamber of the vessel when Talon breached the hangar. The ramp was still open. Too confident. Going somewhere, Talon called out. Kyle turned slowly, unarmed, hands folded behind his back. Ah, the broken soldier. Always one heartbeat behind. Talon raised his rifle. You can't finish what you started. It ends here. Kyle stepped forward, deliberately slow. You don't understand what you've interrupted. She was meant to guide us into a new age, not be protected like some stray animal. She's a child. She's a beacon. The vault is the first. There are others, hundreds, each with technology that could reshape entire planets. You think they'll stop now that she's awakened? Talon didn't lower his weapon. You used her, lied to her, told her she was born for servitude, and you, what will you do? Raise her in a cave. Let her light flicker out because you're afraid of what she could become. Talon's voice dropped. I'll give her a life. Cal paused. Then almost sadly he said, You'll fail. Talon fired. The shot struck Cale's shoulder, sending him to the floor. No fatal wounds, just enough to end the conversation. Talon stepped over him, opened the main console, and purged the data logs. One by one, every trace of Lyra's biometric signature was erased. Every trace of her origin, her potential, her designation as a node. Cale hissed from the floor. You'll doom us all. No, Talon said. I'm giving us a chance. He triggered the self-destruct on the vessel's core systems and walked out without another word. Seren was waiting at the rendezvous point with Lyra already strapped into the ship. He climbed into the pilot's seat, bruised, breathing hard but alive. She didn't speak. She just looked at him. And this time he didn't look away. They launched into the black, leaving Omen Halo to crumble behind them, a tomb for ghosts that never should have been raised. Velmyra welcomed them back not with silence but with wind. Low and constant, brushing through the ravines like it was humming an old tune, meant only for the brave or the foolish. Talon piloted the ship in low and slow, watching the rocky ridges as if expecting a sniper or drone to rise from the shadows. But no one came. No pursuit. No signals. No traces of Eclipse. For the first time in what felt like years, the galaxy wasn't chasing them. He brought the ship down near the old canyon shelter engines, kicking up red dust that swirled around like smoke from an ancient campfire. When the ramp opened, Lyra was already standing still, a little pale, still quiet, but no longer held together by fear. Talon offered his hand. She took it. Seren stepped down beside them, scanning the skies with one hand on her sidearm. It was more habit than need, but Talon respected it. You didn't just stop watching for threats after a life like hers. The moment Lyra stepped onto the ground, the orb in her hand flickered again. A soft light pulsed from its center. No warning, not distress, resonance. She looked up. The canyon remembers me. Seren frowned gently. What do you mean the machine we felt before? The one underground. It's still listening. But now, it's quiet. Waiting, not pulling. Talon glanced toward the ridge. So it's still active. I think it wants to sleep, Lyra said. Like me. That was enough for now. They returned to the shelter and began setting things up again. More permanent this time. Talon found an old solar rig that still worked with a few hours of repair. Seren reassembled the sensor cloak and boosted the interference field. Lyra helped small fingers dancing over tools with a kind of instinct that even Talon had started accepting without question. By nightfall, they had hot food, fresh water from the underground reserve, and quiet. Real quiet. Seren sat beside Talon near the edge of the cave, sipping from a chipped mug. "She's different now," she said softly. "She was always different." "No. I mean, she knows she could have changed everything. She could have unlocked that vault and lit up the stars. But she chose not to." Talon leaned back against the stone. "That kind of strength doesn't come from power. It comes from someone knowing they finally had a choice." Seren watched Lyra as she drew spirals in the sand near the fire pit. "I think," Seren said, "this might be the first time she's not afraid to be a child." Talon smiled faintly. "You said she was built to open things. Maybe what she needed to open wasn't a vault." Seren looked at him. "Then what us?" Lyra looked up then, as if sensing the weight of their words. She stood and walked over to them. Without a word, she nestled between them, her head resting against Talon's arm. He didn't move for a long time. Later that night, long after the wind had calmed and the stars had returned, Talon sat alone outside the shelter watching the sky. Seren joined him after a while, wrapping a thin blanket over her shoulders. "You're thinking too loud," she said. "Can't help it. You think they'll come again? Maybe. Maybe not. Eclipse won't recover from what happened at Omen Halo anytime soon. We bought time. Could be years. Could be days." Seren was quiet. "Then we're not running anymore." "No, we're not." She sat beside him. For a while they said nothing. There was nothing urgent. No plans to make. Just stars to watch and breaths to share. Then softly Seren said, "She thinks of you as her father now." Talon looked at her, surprised. "She said it," Seren continued. "Not in those words, but the way she talks about you. The way she reaches for you before sleep." Talon exhaled slowly. "I'm not sure I deserve that. No one ever does. That's not the point." He nodded, eyes never leaving the horizon. "She's not a beacon anymore," he said. "She's a kid, and we're going to keep it that way as long as we can." Seren's hand found his. Fingers curled around his calloused knuckles, holding steady. They sat that way until the sun crept over the cliffs again, casting golden light across the red rocks in the valley floor. In the warm light of morning, Lyra ran to them with bare feet and a smile too wide for a girl who had once been wired into a machine older than civilization. "Can we go outside today?" she asked. Talon grinned. "I think that's exactly what we should do." The days on Velmyra settled into something that almost resembled peace. Mornings began with the wind rolling through the canyon, carrying the scent of cracked stone and dormant life. Afternoons were filled with small repairs, quiet laughter, and the occasional humming from Lyra as she wandered the rocky terrain, orb in hand, collecting stones and whispering secrets to the wind. And the nights belonged to so many stars that Talon had stopped counting. Talon never said it aloud, but he felt it happening. He was healing. Not all at once, not cleanly, but like bones that had been broken and set in place for the first time in years. One morning, as he worked on stabilizing the makeshift antenna to tap into old satellite feeds, Seren walked up behind him, holding a small datapad. "You need to see this," she said. Talon wiped his hands and took the pad. The screen blinked to life. A coded message. Not Eclipse. A civilian relay buried in old galactic commission bandwidth. Encrypted but decipherable with the right key. Who sent this? I think it was an insider. Someone who knows what happened at Omen Halo. The message was short. Vorn terminated. Eclipse redistributed. Internal divide. Project nodes suspended. Watch your skies. Talon scrolled through it again. "So Kale's gone." Seren nodded. "Looks like someone on the inside didn't like what he was doing. And now Eclipse is fractured. They've shelved the project. But that won't last forever." Talon closed the pad and set it down. "We're ghosts to them right now. Let's keep it that way." They didn't speak further. No plans, no missions. Just the quiet acknowledgement that for the moment they had outpaced the wolves. Lyra came running down the path from the ridge, her boots kicking up soft clouds of red dust. "I found something," she shouted. "Come see." Talon rose and followed her with Seren close behind. They climbed a narrow path that led to a natural overlook where the canyon dipped into a bowl-like valley. In the center, half buried in ash and stone, was a circular slab of metal etched with symbols. Not Varelian, older. Lyra stood beside it, her orb floating gently above her shoulder. "It sings," she said. Talon crouched beside her. "What does it say? It doesn't speak in words. Just feelings. Sadness. Waiting." Seren tilted her head. "Another machine, maybe," Lyra whispered. "But it doesn't want anything. It remembers." Talon examined the markings. They pulsed faintly under his touch. A pattern rhythmic and steady. Not a call. A memory. Stored in resonance. "I don't think it's dangerous," he said. "I think it's a marker," a grave Seren asked. "Or a message." They spent the rest of the day studying the device, but Lyra grew tired quickly. The orb dimmed and the strange hum faded with the setting sun. They left the site untouched, respecting whatever silence it wished to keep. That night, Talon sat outside alone, watching the flames flicker in the fire pit, while Lyra and Seren slept in the shelter. He held the old compass orb in his hands. It had finally gone dark, its work done. He should have felt restless. The galaxy was still spinning, still filled with people who would one day come looking. But somehow that pressure didn't weigh the same anymore. A soft voice broke the silence. "You think they'll find us again?" Talon looked over. Lyra stood in the doorway, her blanket draped around her shoulders, like a cloak. "Maybe," he said. "But if they do, we'll be ready." She walked over and sat beside him. "I'm not scared." "Why not?" "Because I'm not alone." He smiled, slow and tired. "No, you're not." She looked up at the stars, then leaned against his side. "They wanted me to open a vault," she murmured. "But you opened something else." "What's that?" "My heart." The words nearly stopped his breath. He wrapped an arm around her and let the silence hold them. Later, Seren joined them. She didn't say anything, just slid in on the other side of Lyra and took her hand. The three of them sat there watching the sky. Not waiting, not hiding, just being. And for the first time, Talon realized something. This wasn't just a hiding place. It was home. Rain came to Velmyra in whispers. It began as mist drifting across the canyon floor, like a low-lying cloud. Then came the droplets, soft, hesitant, as if the planet itself was testing its memory of gentleness. Talon stood at the edge of the shelter, arms crossed, watching the water strike the scorched stone. He hadn't seen rain in years. Not real rain, not like this. Behind him, the sound of light footsteps. Lyra. She stepped up beside him, face tilted to the sky, eyes closed. The water clung to her hair and shimmered down her cheeks, tracing invisible lines where once wires had bound her. "It's warm," she said. Talon nodded. "Velmyra doesn't freeze. It breathes." She held out her hands and caught a few drops, watching how they glowed faintly in her palms. "I thought rain would be loud," she said. "It can be, but not here." They stood together, listening. Seren emerged shortly after, draping a wrap around her shoulders. Her eyes met Talon's, and he saw the unspoken question. He nodded slightly. She relaxed. The storm wasn't a threat. Not this time. The quiet didn't last long. As the rain continued, a familiar chime rang out from the old satellite link Talon had been slowly restoring for weeks. He turned sharply. That chime was not system noise. It was a signal. He rushed to the console. Lines of text streamed across the cracked screen. Not Eclipse. Not military. It was an open ping bounced through civilian relay satellites. The message was simple: survivors requesting aid. Coordinates follow. Talon stared at it. It repeated twice. Then it went dark. Seren read it over his shoulder. Could be a trap. Could be, he agreed. Or it could be people like us. Running. Lost. Lyra watched them both quietly. "They're afraid." "You feel them?" Seren asked gently. Lyra nodded. "They're not far." Talon looked at Seren. "If Eclipse is fractured, maybe some of their other experiments got out." Seren exhaled slowly. "Then maybe we're not the only ones who refuse to become tools." A long pause stretched between them. Then Talon stood. "We go at first light. Prep the skiff. If it's a trap, we deal with it. If it's not, then someone out there still believes help will come." They packed lightly. At dawn, the sun cut golden through the haze, turning the canyon into a cathedral of light. Talon piloted the hover skiff over broken ridges, following the weak coordinates. Lyra sat between him and Seren, the orb cradled in her lap, flickering now and then, like it was unsure whether it should awaken or sleep. They reached the edge of a collapsed cliff network within an hour. At first, nothing stood out. Then Talon spotted the signal flare. Weak, manual. Someone had burned into the rocks below using a laser torch. Help. He brought the skiff down slowly. No movement, no sounds. Just the hum of the engine and the crackling of nearby wind vents. Then he saw them. A small group. 5 in total. Huddled under a metallic canopy torn from an old escape pod. 2 adults. 3 children. Dust-covered, exhausted, but alive. Seren was the first to step down. "We're not Eclipse," she called. One of the adults, a woman with cropped silver hair and a scar running down her jaw, raised her head slowly. "Didn't think Eclipse would stop for a rainstorm." Talon approached next weapon lowered but ready. "How long have you been here? 4 weeks, the woman replied. "We were part of the Delta Node, research colony. When the purge came, we ran," Node Talon asked. She nodded toward a young boy seated beside her. "They said he was resonant. Not like her, but close. They wanted to reprocess him. We said no." Lyra stepped forward. The boy stared at her. Their eyes locked. And then something strange happened. The orb in Lyra's hands pulsed once, then dimmed, and the boy's eyes flickered faintly as if a current had passed between them. "Hello," he said. Lyra smiled. "You're not broken." The boy blinked. "They told me I was." "You're not," she repeated. "You're like me. Just different." The boy grinned, a wide, relieved grin. Talon turned to the woman. "You're safe now, but Eclipse might still be listening. You come with us, you disappear." "We already did," she said. By nightfall, they had returned to the canyon. The shelter grew more crowded, but also more alive. Laughter returned. Not much, but enough. Seren helped the newcomers settle in. Talon expanded the sensor grid. Lyra taught the boy how to calm the orb when it sparked. Later, as the stars returned, Seren sat beside Talon by the fire. "You always planned to be the quiet one in the corner," she asked. "I don't know how to be anything else," he said with a shrug. "Well," she smiled, "you might have to learn." He looked over at the group gathered around Lyra. The girl stood like a light in the center of the dark. Not because she wanted attention, but because others found comfort in her warmth. "She's building something here," Talon said. "No, we are." He nodded. That night, long after sleep had taken most of them, Talon remained awake watching the sky. Somewhere across the stars more would come. Others who had run, others who had resisted, and when they arrived they would not find ruins. They would find a home. The days that followed unfolded like pages from a book no one expected to write. What had once been a cave carved by time became something else entirely, a sanctuary, a place woven from shared meals, repaired circuits, and the laughter of children who had finally stopped looking over their shoulders. More families came. Not many and never loudly. Some arrived broken. Others came angry. A few, like Lyra and the boy she'd met on the ridge, shared the quiet resonance that had once made them targets. Now it made them kin. They didn't call it a colony. That word tasted too much like orders and administration. It was just the camp. A circle of lives drawn together by choices, not programming. Talon found himself building more than walls. He built water catchers. He built signal dampeners. He even built a wind-powered cooking station that everyone pretended wasn't dangerously unstable until the 4th time it caught fire. But most of all, he built a routine. He checked perimeter sensors at dawn, tuned the pulse net after mid-meal. I walked the outer ridge before sundown, and when the stars came out, he usually found himself standing alone with a mug of weak tea listening to nothing. That nothing had started to feel like peace. One evening, as the last light vanished behind the canyon wall, Lyra came to him carrying the orb again. It glowed softly now, more like a heartbeat than a beacon. She sat beside him on the ledge, hugging her knees. "You feel it too?" she asked. Talon didn't answer right away. "Feel what the quiet before something changes." He glanced at her. Her voice was calm, but her eyes were watching the sky. "You think they're coming?" he asked. "No, not yet, but something is." He didn't laugh. He had long since learned that when Lyra said things like that, she wasn't guessing. Good or bad, he asked gently. She shrugged. Both maybe, or neither. It's not here yet. Talon leaned back against the warm stone. That's vague even for you. Lyra giggled. Sorry. They sat in silence for a while before she spoke again. Did you ever want to leave this place? Every day, he replied. She blinked. Really sure. The heat, the dust, the food that tastes like recycled regret. I miss fresh air and real showers. Then why do you stay? He looked at her and said, Because you're here. She didn't respond, but she smiled, and that was enough. The next day, a strange signal came through the local scanner net. Not a distress call, not a relay request. A simple pulse, resonant, subtle, almost like a whisper. Seren found Talon in the comms room frowning at the monitor. Something wrong, she asked. Maybe he said, This isn't just static, it's patterned. Lyra walked in behind her mother, already alert. Talon looked up. You recognize this? She nodded slowly. It's not from here, it's from below. Below what Seren asked. Lyra pointed toward the deep ravine beyond the main ridge. The same one they had never fully explored. The thing we found before? The marker, it's waking up. Talon stood already reaching for his gear. Then we'd better go find out why. They left at dawn, taking the skiff along the edge of the ravine until it narrowed into a steep decline. The air grew colder, drier, like the canyon was exhaling slowly after holding its breath for centuries. At the bottom they found the marker again, the metal circle half buried in the rock. But now it wasn't quiet. It glowed. Pale blue lines etched into its surface flickered, slowly pulsing like breath. Lyra knelt beside it, her fingers hovering just above. It doesn't want to be opened, she said. It wants to be remembered. What does that mean? Seren asked. I don't know yet. Talon walked a slow circle around the structure. Looks like a vault hatch. Could be another system like the one at Omen Halo. Could be, Seren said. Or it could be older. Lyra stood. It's not dangerous, but it feels sad. They camped beside it that night, not out of necessity, but respect. A quiet vigil, a place that had once waited for something to happen, and perhaps was now ready to let go. Lyra sat by the fire silent. Then without warning, she began to hum. It was a simple melody, unfamiliar, soft. The orb responded first, rising into the air and spinning slowly. Then the marker's glow intensified. The pulsing slowed, and then it stopped. The light dimmed, and the air felt lighter, as if a burden had been lifted. Talon blinked. What did you just do? I sang goodbye. To what? To whatever was waiting. They returned to camp the next morning, changed but unsure how. That night, Talon sat alone watching the stars. A quiet voice behind him. Seren. She's healing the past, she said. He nodded. And somehow that's healing us too. Seren sat beside him close. She deserves better than this place. She deserves the choice. Seren looked up at the sky. Maybe someday we'll build something worth showing her. We already are, Talon said. One day at a time. The wind carried the sound of children laughing in the distance. And for a little while longer, they let the future wait. Velmira's winds shifted. Talon felt it before the alarm sounded. It wasn't the kind of change that came with a signal or a sensor trip. It was the pressure in the air, the way the canyon birds stopped singing, the way Lyra turned her head mid-laugh and stared off toward the western ridge with wide, silent eyes. They had built something here, something stable, something gentle. But peace, he had learned, was a living thing. It required protection. And sometimes it gave warning before it died. He stood on the edge of the central ridge, binoculars raised, scanning the horizon. They're here, he said. Seren appeared at his side, already armed. How many? Talon adjusted the focus. Not sure. Can't get a clean read. No signals. No power signatures. But those shadows, they're moving in patterns. Lyra came up behind them. Her face was calm, but her orb was glowing again. Not bright. Just enough to cast a faint shimmer across her hands. I know who it is, she said softly. Eclipse, Seren asked. Lyra shook her head. Nyros. Talon frowned. I thought we shut him down. You shut down part of him, Lyra said. The vault was only a node. Intelligence runs through a distributed system. He's not a machine. He's an idea. One that's still alive. Seren looked at Talon. How long do we have? Minutes? Maybe less. The camp mobilized quickly. They had rehearsed for this possibility, though none of them truly believed it would come. Old fighters pulled out weapons they had buried for peace of mind. The children were moved into the inner cavern. Emergency dampeners were activated. Talon stood at the front near the ridge. He could see them now, dark figures moving like ghosts just beyond the rising dust. Sleek, non-reflective, humanoid in shape but wrong in motion. Fast, too fast. Not Eclipse foot soldiers. Drones. And then came the sound, a resonance pulse. High-pitched, thin, like the cry of metal being stretched beyond its breaking point. Everyone in the camp felt it, not physically, but emotionally, as if their thoughts had suddenly been weighed. Talon steadied his grip on the railgun. They're scanning us. Seren gritted her teeth. Looking for her. Lyra stepped forward. They already know I'm here. No, Talon said. We're not doing this again. You're not giving yourself up. I'm not, she replied. But I have to speak to them. Before he could stop her, she stepped ahead of the line and raised her hand. The orb shot into the air, spinning rapidly. The drones halted. Then the ground split. A chasm opened beneath the enemy formation, not deep but wide like the planet itself had torn open in protest. The drones didn't fall. They hovered, waiting. A voice came not from the air but from the rock itself. You denied the inheritance. You malfunction. Lyra didn't flinch. I am not yours. You were created for purpose. You denied function. You waste. I chose. A pause. Then deletion is mercy. The drones surged forward. Talon fired first. The railguns screamed and took out the lead drone in a burst of sparks and shrapnel. The others scattered, moving in a blur. The camp returned fire. Pulses lit the sky, cutting through dust and smoke. Seren fought beside Talon, covering the left flank. Her movements were surgical clean. Every shot landed. Lyra stood in the center, untouched. The orb around her spun faster, glowing so brightly now that it illuminated her hair like a halo. Her eyes were closed, her hands raised, and the machines hesitated. One by one they stopped. Not destroyed, not disabled. Listening. Lyra whispered something. Talon couldn't hear the words. Then a ripple passed through the drones. One dropped its weapon, then another. Within seconds, they all powered down and lowered to the ground like kneeling figures before a queen. The silence that followed was deafening. Talon lowered his weapon. What did you do? Lyra opened her eyes slowly. I rewrote the instructions. I didn't tell them to stop. I reminded them they could. Seren stared. They were autonomous partially, enough to choose if given the language. Talon looked at the battlefield, at the kneeling drones, at the crater where the earth had cracked. You just stopped a war with a whisper. Lyra turned to him. No, I just told the truth. They spent the rest of the day collecting the drones, deactivating the cores, storing the usable parts. None of them reactivated. They had shut themselves down. By sunset, the camp was quiet again, not untouched but unbroken. Talon sat near the fire, staring into the embers. Seren joined him, brushing dust from her sleeves. I don't know what to say. You don't have to, he said. She's going to change the galaxy someday. She already is. They watched Lyra from afar. She stood near the edge of the ridge, speaking softly to the boy from the rescue weeks ago. He nodded, mimicking the spin of her orb with his own small device. Talon exhaled. She didn't just stop them. She rewrote the idea of them. That's more dangerous than any weapon, or more hopeful. He nodded. Both. Seren leaned against his shoulder. We built something here. We're not done yet. That night the stars seemed brighter, as if the sky itself had noticed that one small canyon on a forgotten planet had changed something far bigger than it realized. The drones never woke again. Talon made certain of it. He spent the better part of 2 days dismantling them, stripping down their exoshells, isolating the neural nodes, and burying the central cores in shielded containers deep beneath the canyon floor. It was not distrust that drove him. It was duty. Lyra had given them a choice, but choice once granted had to be protected. The camp watched with quiet respect. No one questioned his work. No one needed to. Lyra stayed close those days, not out of fear, but out of a kind of reflection. She had spent most of her life being told she was built to awaken machines. Now she has taught them how to sleep. That shift was more powerful than any explosion. Late one afternoon, as Talon returned from the ravine, dusty and tired, he found Lyra sitting alone by the fire pit. Her orb floated lazily above her head, dim and slow, like a sleepy moon. She didn't look up as he approached. "I thought they would come again," she said. "They might," he replied, setting his tools down beside her. "But I'm not scared." He looked at her. "You don't have to be." She turned to him. "You aren't either." He gave a soft smile. "I used to be. All the time. What changed you?" She didn't speak, but she leaned against him. And in that quiet moment, the years he'd spent carrying silence like armor cracked just a little more. Later that night, Seren brought something into the shelter wrapped in cloth. She set it gently on the table and beckoned Talon and Lyra over. "What's this?" Talon asked. Seren smiled. "Something we forgot to do." She unwrapped the cloth to reveal a carved pendant shaped from one of the resonance stones Lyra had collected near the old marker. A simple design of 3 arcs interlocked around a central node. "I thought," Seren said softly, "maybe it's time we gave her a name. A real one." Talon looked confused. "She has a name, I know, but that name came from the lab, from their files. I think she deserves something of her own." Lyra looked at the pendant. Her fingers traced the arcs. "It means unity," Seren said. "Balance and protection," like family, Lyra whispered. Seren nodded. Talon cleared his throat. "You have a name in mind." Lyra smiled almost shyly. "I want to keep Lyra. But can I have yours too?" Both adults froze. Seren blinked quickly. Talon's voice cracked slightly. "You want our names?" Lyra nodded. "You're not just the people who saved me. You're the ones who stayed." Seren reached out and took her hand. "Then it's yours." They didn't hold a ceremony. There were no speeches or banners. Just a pendant, a name, and 3 people sitting quietly by a fire while the wind outside hummed approval. Talon carved her new name into the registry they kept for the camp, half memory, half record. Lyra Merek. It felt right. The next day, word came from one of the scout teams. Another group of survivors had sent a message this time, with coordinates from a planetary system 2 jumps away. Faint but clear. They were asking for a safe haven. Talon and Seren stood together on the ridge, scanning the horizon where the skiff was being readied again. Behind them, the camp buzzed with preparation. These missions had become familiar now. Rescue, return, rebuild. Not as soldiers, not as fugitives, as builders. "Still think this place is temporary?" Seren asked with a wry smile. Talon chuckled. "At this point, we're overdue for building a gate. An outpost, a beginning." She stepped closer. "You're changing too, you know." "Oh," he raised an eyebrow. "You smile now, sometimes without even grumbling first." He laughed. "Lies." She reached out and took his hand. "Still, it suits you." They didn't need to say what they were thinking. That something was shifting again. That this place, once a hiding spot, had become more. As the skiff launched toward the horizon with Lyra waving from the co-pilot seat, Talon stood watching until the dust settled. They weren't just surviving anymore. They were becoming something stronger than legacy. They were becoming a community that chose its purpose. And Lyra was no longer just a node, no longer a key that was the spark that kept it alive. The quiet came back to Velmyra, but it was a different kind of quiet. Not the hush of fear, not the breathless pause before a threat returned. This was the kind of quiet that meant contentment, completion. For once, the silence felt earned. Lyra sat on a flat stone at the top of the ridge, her legs swinging off the edge, the wind teasing her hair. Below, the camp moved with rhythm. Families prepared evening meals. Children chased one another between solar arrays and tool crates. A new solar well had just been completed. Talon had even started sketching plans for a small learning hall. The community had outgrown its hiding place. Seren approached the ridge slowly, a soft smile on her face. She carried a small bundle wrapped in cloth and new clothes stitched together from scrap and care. Clothes not meant for running or hiding, but for standing tall. "For you," Seren said, placing the bundle beside her daughter. "From everyone." Lyra touched the fabric, letting her fingers run over each fold. "Why? Because you gave them a reason to believe again." Lyra looked down at the camp. I didn't do that alone. No, but it started with you. Talon arrived a few minutes later, still wearing his welding gloves. He took one look at the scene and gave Seren a puzzled glance. She's not in trouble, is she? No, Seren replied with a soft laugh. Quite the opposite. He crouched beside Lyra and brushed a bit of dust from her shoulder. How's the air up here, lighter? She said. Quieter, but in a good way. He nodded. That's what home feels like. They watched the sun begin to dip behind the canyon walls. The light turned golden, washing everything in warmth. Seren sat between them, her hand finding Talon's, her other resting gently on Lyra's back. I've been thinking, Talon said after a while. Oh boy, Seren teased. Should I be worried I was going to say, maybe we should stop calling this a camp? Seren raised an eyebrow. What then, a haven? A place you don't just run to, a place you build from. Lyra tilted her head. What do we call it? Talon looked out over the valley. You should choose. The girl considered, thought deeply as only she could. Then she smiled. Call it resonance. Talon blinked. Resonance. It's what brought us together. It's what we carry. Not just power or signal, but the feeling that you're not alone, that you matter. Seren nodded, a lump rising in her throat. Then resonance it is. As the sky faded to twilight, the three of them sat on that ridge and found family bonded, not by blood but by choice. Below them, the people of resonance prepared for the next day, for new arrivals, for new hopes. The wind sang through the canyon, not wild, not fierce, just present, like a promise whispered into the bones of the world. And Lyra, once a tool forged in a lab, once a child defined by what she could unlock, was now something else entirely. She was free. She was home. She was the heartbeat of a new beginning. Not every story of salvation ends with a war. Some end in a quiet place, with three people sitting under the stars, listening to the wind speak of futures not yet written. Talon Merek never thought he would feel whole again. Not after the war. Not after losing everything that gave his life meaning. But in Lyra, he found not just purpose, but healing. In Seren, he found strength that didn't come from force, but from staying. And in resonance, he found proof that survival could become something more. Seren Valis was meant to be a vessel, a genetic experiment. But she became a mother, a protector, a voice that refused to be silenced. She burned the past not with fire, but with tenderness and resilience. And Lyra was never meant to be born. She was designed to open vaults to bring ancient technologies to heal. But instead she opened hearts. She rewrote systems not with commands but with compassion. She taught machines to choose silence. And she taught people to believe again. They did not save the galaxy. They saved something smaller, something more precious, each other. And maybe that was enough. Because sometimes the greatest revolution begins with a choice not to be what the world made you, but to become what you were never allowed to dream of. A daughter, a family, a home.